Hi, I'm Nathan, the Porcelain Panel Pro. One of the challenges facing most installers today is that we are getting slabs of varying thicknesses, some as thin as 1/8 of an inch, others as thick as a 1/2 inch or more. So what can you do to cut these thicker slabs without having to use a score and snap system? Well, today we're going to look at the Rubi TC125 and see what type of results we can get out of that machine that will help you on your job site. The TC125 circular saw from Rubi is part of the Rubi slab system for handling and cutting porcelain slabs and other large format tile. It runs on standard 110 volt electricity and utilizes the same guide track as the Rubi Slim cutter. The TC125 comes in its own carrying box. You can purchase your saw a la carte or as a kit wherein the track guide is included. This machine is designed to handle either straight cuts or mitering of your material. The saw sits in the grooves of the Rubi Slim system guide track, with ball bearing wheels keeping the machine steady and straight while cutting. You can cut material up to 2 centimeters thick and miter up to 18 millimeters with blades measuring no more than 5 inches, but I would recommend you stick to blades 4.5 inches in size. To change blades, open the black guard that opens to the left and raise the clear protective housing. Make sure the cut depth is raised all the way up for maximum access. Using the wrench provided by Rubi, lock the blade nut down and then use a 10 millimeter wrench to twist the tightening bolt to the right. Remember, this is opposite what you normally would think. Right is loose, left is tight. Switch out the blade, making sure you follow the proper pattern flow of the blade's diamonds. Reattach the bolt and fitting nut, tightening until firm. Do not over tighten. Rubi offers 2 types of blades for use on the TC125. The first, a personal favorite of mine just for doing regular cuts on a Makita grinder, is the Viper 4.5 inch mesh blade. This is a great thin kerf blade if you're trying to get good, clean, straight cuts. But with the TC125, it also offers miters, which the Viper is not recommended to be used. What can we try out? The Arrowhead. It's also a 4.5 inch blade, and with this being a little bit sturdier and a little bit wider on the kerf, it allows us to be able to get the miters cut as well. Now ultimately we need to review and test to see how the Arrowhead performs. So let's give it a try. As should be standard for any porcelain project you work on, set up your fabrication table, ensuring flatness is within tolerance of 1/8 of an inch over 10 feet, and place your slab or piece atop the table. Assemble your guide track to desired length. To assemble your track, take the Rubi 4mm hex handle and loosen the 4 nuts on the locking bar and the 2 underneath the guide track. Slide the bars out and connect with the other guide track. Tighten down the nuts to the point of being snug. Do not over tighten, as that will damage and warp your track over time. If connected properly, your locking bars will be evenly split between the 2 tracks. As a kind reminder, when you are done with the track or cleaning the job site, check to make sure you have all of your nuts, as they do tend to fall loose. One of the neat features that Rubi advertises for the TC125 is that you can run it either dry or wet. To run it dry, you need to remove the cap that's on the body of the saw and connect a hose from your HEPA vacuum. This will allow it to collect any particulates and dust that might come up during production. Now for our review today, we're going to run with water. I personally believe that with a circular saw, the water helps keep the tile cooler, it helps your blade to stay sharp, and make sure that you limit the amount of chips that might occur on your mitered edge. So before I get soaked in my boots today, I only ask that you like and subscribe our channel so that you can stay up to date on all the videos that we're releasing. Now, let's get my PPE on. To connect water, Rubi provides a garden hose adapter in each case. The connection is located on the rear of the saw and has a valve to control water flow to the saw blade. One technique that is valuable before any cut with a circular saw device is to do a test incision. This gives you a firm idea on how far off from the track your saw runs. Lock down the track guide by attaching the suction cups and run the blade for just a short second or two, making contact with the tile. Remove the saw and check the distance off the track. For my test cut, I found that the inside of my blade cut was at 1 1/16, whereas the outside of my cut was at 1 1/8. This is important because if you're trying to cut a piece exactly to a spot, exactly to a measurement, if you don't plan out where your position is, it's going to be off. So make sure that when you receive your unit, you do your own test. If you change a blade, confirm that the new blade matches what you've already been cutting to. It's very important, and again, it's a pro tip to avoid some costly mistakes. For this review, I am cutting a portion of 12mm material. I've lowered the saw blade to full depth to see how it cuts. One thing about 12mm and these smaller hand tools is that if you push the machine, it will cut through the material, but it's going to bend it. It's going to go off the rails. It's going to go a direction you don't want it to go. So just the same with this TC125, if you do a full depth cut on the first go, it's not going to cut where you want it. So let me show you a trick to make that work out a little bit easier. To get a straight cut, bring the saw to the edge of the material and raise the blade to only cut about 1/8 of an inch or so down. Run the saw the full length of your cut and then return to the starting point. Lower it down another 1/8 of an inch or so and repeat the full rips until you have fully cut your slab. Remember to support any piece as you are cutting that you might need for your project. You do not want it to drop to the ground. It might be advantageous to use a dense foam or cementitious board under the slabs to help support the cross cuts. I would hate for you to cut your expensive fabrication table. By cutting with step cuts, like we're doing with the TC125, it allows your blade to work a little bit easier. There's less burden placed on the motor of the saw, which in turn means that your RPMs can stay higher, which means your blade cuts faster, which means your stone looks cleaner. It's just a great trick to have, no matter what machine you're working with. The Rubi runs great while on the guide. I was really impressed with the quality of the cut. On another rail saw system I formerly owned, I would need to clean up the edge from where the blade didn't perfectly line up the same. Not an issue with the Rubi. While I was testing the TC125, I came across a real-world problem that I needed the machine to perform on. We had a 12mm slab of material that was not scoring and snapping on our CNC equipment. So we set everything up so that I could use the TC125. How did I do it? I did exactly as I showed you earlier, doing multiple step cuts, and within 45 minutes I had clean straight lines on the entire slab. And then the very next day I had to use the TC125 again to fix another problem that I had. So here we have a real world problem that we're going to solve quickly with the TC125 by Rubi. We have a countertop that was ordered by the homeowner. They thought they were going to use an undermount sink, and then at the last minute changed to an undermount sink, a farm sink in fact. So we need to go ahead and cut along this straight line here all the way to the back, so that the section at the rear of the farm sink is its own individual piece. And by doing that, we should have a nice clean cut that we can then hand miter to perfection. So let's see how this machine runs on an existing countertop. Again, the Rubi proved itself by cutting straight through the 6mm material that was already attached to substrate with thinset. This Rubi held its own and performed beautifully. For $300 at most stores for the saw only, it is a great deal. For $600, you can get the full kit online. It's an amazing price point for a very reliable tool. The Rubi TC125 is fantastic for cutting straight cuts, no matter the thickness of material. But the question then remains, how does the machine cut miters? How does it work? And how can you make adjustments so that you get a perfect miter every time? Well, for those answers and more, make sure to check out our Part 2 review of the TC125. You can also find other reviews from Rubi, as well as other manufacturers on our YouTube channel, so make sure you like and subscribe. I thank you for watching today, and as always, you're not a pro unless you know.